The D Word Podcast. And today's podcast, if you have ever checked out my social media, one of the biggest questions I get asked is tips on marriage. So, firstly, upfront, this is just a personal view on some of the things I've experienced. And if you have checked out my previous podcast, you know that I always talk about things that I've personally experienced. I believe that I cannot give an opinion or advice on something unless I have experienced this. So the month of April for me is a very important month for me because it's my wedding anniversary month. And just a few days ago, depending when you're checking out this podcast, I posted something very inspirational about marriage on my Instagram. So check it out on Instagram if you want to. My Instagram handle is right there. Check it out. And it's a whole lot of stuff that I've put together in text. And it is something built on what I'm about to share with you here on my podcast. I have to say this up front, whether you are watching the vodcast, which is the video version of the podcast, or listening to it, I don't believe in editing anything on my podcast. I don't believe in cutting out something. If I make a mistake, I'm not going to edit it out. I'm going to leave it here because I believe in truth. And I also believe in giving it to you the way it was, as if I'm in the same room with you. People don't edit out stuff to make in a mistake in a conversation. They just share it and continue the conversation. So I don't have a script in front of me. I've just got the camera, a microphone, and hopefully we can have a good, truthful conversation today on the D Word Podcast. Whenever I hear the word marriage, and if I were to look back at my earlier years, maybe my teen years going into my early 20s, I always looked at marriage built on everyone around me. Everyone around me would be like by 27, 28, they'd be married, and then they start a family. And let's be honest, most of the time it is happening that way because we see it, or as the world sees it, as normal, right? There is no normal or abnormal way of doing life. If you want to do it because you want to at that age, that's great. But there are a few things you need to ask yourself before you get there, right? And we are going to talk about that today on this podcast. And I think that some of the things I will share may disrupt people's opinions. Remember, this is my opinion, and it's okay if you don't agree with me or disagree with me. And whatever your opinion is, that's also okay. But let's have some boundaries on this podcast. This is the podcast that I'm sharing with you. So I'm going to share with you my view. And I hope it lands somewhere deep in your heart. Maybe you are a person that is at the position where you may be asking yourself these questions. And I hope that this podcast does give you some clarity on some of the things you should be asking yourself. So when you are getting married, right? And I'm going to go back to the time when I first heard the word marriage. You have to have, according to society, a few things ticked in your life box, which means either career, you got to have some stability in your life, which, might I add, is correct. Those are some of the things that I think is very vital in understanding where your life is going to go, especially with marriage. And you got to have a good job before you get married. You got to have some stability, but you don't have to have the accolades that people say you got to have. When I say accolades, like you got to have lots and lots of this, lots and lots of that. And yes and no, depending what kind of life you want to have when you're married. Some of those things are important, but it is important to have it with your partner and have that conversation with your partner. And that is where we're going to start off this podcast today. We're going to start off your podcast with just talking about what kind of partner you should look for. All of us have had this question asked by our parents, or maybe just given to us by our parents, that you got to have a person of all these things. But nobody asks, where does this come from? I do understand all our parents want the best for us to have, but shopping for a partner is not normal. You cannot shop for a partner. You can shop for an item that you want, a piece of clothing. Ladies, you can shop for a handbag, the perfect fit for you. But when it comes to a partner, this is somebody who's going to be doing life with you. And If you are a very independent person, you have to understand that when you're going into marriage, it's not you and not them, it's us. It's us. And sometimes we don't think about that when we go into a relationship. I always think that a lot of people, when they have status of their career, they feel that the missing part would be the partner who they share this with. And it's not a calculation built on, I have everything else, now I have to go for this. And if you are doing it that way, it could be tricky because you don't know who else will be thinking like you. If you found somebody who thinks like that, then that's great, then it's a win for you. But if you haven't, and majority of people don't think that way, it would be tricky on what you would find available for you in the dating circle. So let's just say you are dating somebody in your 20s and somehow you are influenced not to date this person by people around you. That sounds familiar, right? Maybe people around you would say that person is not ideal for you, built on what they think. Now remember, when people have an opinion about somebody you are dating and you let them dictate how this relationship should go, you are giving them the power to dictate your life, which, might I add, is not independent at all. Just to say. And if you go ahead with this, remember, you are letting somebody else judge somebody built on their opinion, not yours. So the first boundary is, don't let people dictate how your relationship should start or how it should go. Your relationship is built on your life choices and how your life should go. And I know all of us have people around us who would say, that person's not right for you. This person's not right for you. Maybe there's good intentions in it, but we live in a world where you got to find somebody who's a match for you, which is far more important than what people's opinions are built on their own experiences on relationships. And it comes to a very important fact that I'm about to unpack right now. Your life is built on the choices you make, right? And the choices you make influence how your life is going to go. So just say in your 20s, you found the right person, you talk about life, but you don't have a lot in your life settled yet to plunge into marriage. What's the first thing you need to do? You need to talk to each other about it. If you are dating somebody for a long time and maybe you guys have spoken about marriage and you feel like, hey, I don't know if we are ready for this. Well, talk about it, right? Have a plan in place. Say, hey, if we don't have the finances for marriage, how can we get there? How can we save towards this? I don't want to start marriage off with debt. How can we offset some of this before we get there? These are the conversations you need to have with your partner. And if you all don't have that conversation, you could go into marriage with a lot of encounters of shock, stress, and then some. So I think having a conversation with your partner, if you're dating them and you have the intention of dating them to go into marriage, have the conversation that says, hey, where do we see our lives going? How can we get there? And then when you are dating somebody, you will have an indication of whether they are independent or not, right? And if they are independent, you will see it. But you need to somehow bring this into the conversation when you are dating, that if we are getting married, what are some of the things that will change for us? Note the key word being us. Not you, not me, us. Those words need to be developed from the time you guys are thinking about marriage. That, hey, we're going to get married. What are some of the things we're going to do? You can't go back to your family members and say, how do we fix this? Because that's not independent either. You need to somehow remove that and say, if we are the new family, we are creating a family with your husband or wife and your future kids, that's the important part you need to focus on. You need to let go of whatever was there and say, hey, now this is going to be the step I'm going into. How can I go about doing it? The first step you need to do in getting married is understanding where you want to be. The second step is, what are your goals when you're married? And the third part is, where do you see your family going if this has to happen? I can dwell a lot on that part of point number 1 and 2 or 3, but I'm going to say this up front because this can be a very long podcast, and I promised myself this would not be a long one. Here's the most important tip. Surround yourself by people who you aspire to learn from. And maybe all of us would say our parents are the best role models when it comes to marriage. Yes and no. Maybe your parents were, and that's great, and maybe your parents weren't. So if your parents weren't, what do? You go online. Try and look at public figures who have a relationship that you want to model your life on. Don't do it like, and I've heard this before many times, our parents in their time and age, they could wing it, and that was okay. But in today's society, you can't wing marriage built on what will happen will be. We'll see how it goes. You can't see how it goes because you are channeling your life built on life, and life could change a lot of things for us. The pandemic was one example where it came in, people were shocked, and it did change a lot of people's way of life. So try to be around people whose life marriage is a role model. Before I got married, I was around a few people, acquaintances, who gave me very bad advice. They were like, marriage is tough, marriage is this, marriage is going to be so stressful. But then I thought about it. Maybe these people have unhappy marriages. That's why they're saying it, because they have the experience of being unhappy. But they shouldn't have said that to me, because what happens if I don't experience that? And that was the truth. I never experienced any of the bad advice people told me, because I found somebody who was different to what they had. And I found the person built on what I wanted and what I felt was the person I want to do life with. So it all stems with who you're taking advice from. And don't take negative advice, and don't listen to people. If people have strained marriages, which means they've got put into positions where they don't know how to deal with it, give them the grace to understand that they didn't know any better. But if they've got a story to share and said they've learned from it, take that lesson. So that would be some of the things. So I've learned a lot from that. And I've also learned that if you want to do married life with your partner, do it according to your terms. If you're not financially ready for marriage, don't do it. If you think age is catching up with you and you don't want to put yourself in this commitment, don't do it. If you want to start a family, don't let that pressure put you into marriage. If you want to have a family, talk about it. Hey, how much money do I have for my family? How much money will they need? Because everybody wants kids in marriage, but nobody understands that you're not just raising a kid, you're raising an adult, which means you're going to be mentally ready to formulate this person's mind. And if you're not ready for that, you've got to ask yourself those questions. We live in a society nowadays where people talk about marriage, and people also talk about not wanting to have an extended family. Some people's extended family may be 1 kid, 2 kids. Some people's extended family may be animals or pets. So it takes maturity to understand what is right for you, but it also takes maturity to understand accepting what you want. So let's just, and I feel like I could talk about this for a long time. Let's just give a few points that I think you can learn from when it comes to marriage. So if you are not married and you are dating somebody that you want to get married to, firstly, ask yourself, is this person going to be understanding of our goals? Which means some people would say, hey, marriage is, I'm a decent person because I don't drink, I don't smoke, I'm a decent person, and my parents have told me I'm a decent person. Not drinking, not smoking means not drinking, not smoking. It doesn't mean you're decent. You could be a person who lies a lot. You could be a person who does deceitful things, treats people wrong. So it doesn't really make it decent. So society's acceptance of what decent is built on how you treat your partner and how you want to be treated back. People want a decent person, but you should ask yourself, are you that decent person first? Whatever you want in a partner, ask yourself, are you that first? Because mutual love grows more in time. But it takes a lot of people to understand that and unpack that within themselves. So ask yourself, what are you in a relationship? What can you be in a marriage? And where can you be in a marriage? So once you get all of that covered, and as I said, this could be one of many topics that I would share here on my podcast, but I felt that it's a good time to do it. The first step is ask yourself, with your partner, where you want to be, as I said moments ago. How can you get there? Mentally get there, financially get there, and what are some of the goals you want to do? Don't do life because everybody else is doing it the same way. Do life the way you want to. If you want to get married in your 30s, do so. If people say that's too old, that's their opinion, not yours. What is good for you and your partner is all that matters. Interdependence is another word. which you can Google and do some research on that. But you and your partner together as a team need to do life the way you want to do it, not because the pressure is out there, but because you feel it's right for you and your partner. Friends, I can carry on talking about this, but I feel like in summary, marriage is a wonderful thing. And marriage can be wonderful if you are with the partner that sees you for who you are and vice versa. And you'll want to build something together. If you'll want to do life that may shock the community, that's your choice. You need to let go of people's opinions affecting how you and your partner feel. My wife and I, we do life very differently. We believe that we talk about what we want. We do what we want because it's our choices. It may be different to other people. We don't think it's normal or abnormal. We think it's our way, and our way is okay for us. So you and your partner should do the same thing. And I want to leave this with you. If you have not found somebody, and maybe you are part of that category where you had a lot of expectations from a person, they must have this, must have that. Remember, you can't expect the person to be perfect if you are not perfect. And here's the side note to that. Nobody in life is perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. So you need to have the idea that what you see in a movie is far from reality, and what you expect from a partner is what that person is giving you. If the person respects you, if the person values you, if the person wants to do life with you, and the person has the same intention in the relationship, and that, my friends, is all you need to be happy. People put a lot of expectations on money and things. Money and things will come, and money and things can be made. But finding a person who's willing to do life with you, that is a gift. So I hope that this can resonate with you. If you've enjoyed this podcast or vodcast, drop a line in the comments. Let me know what you've learned from it. And if you are in the steps of getting into marriage, remember, it's a wonderful experience. Don't let anyone say anything to disrupt what's lying ahead of you. And don't forget, you and your partner are a team. God bless. Until next time, take care.